The Sunday school lessons for September 14th, 2025 are Hezekiah's Passover and Celebrating the Past. Second Chronicles chapter 30, verses 1 through 9 and verses 26 through 27. Welcome, viewers and subscribers, to my channel, The Backstory and More. If you are new here, please know that this is an audio reading of the lesson with intermittent commentary. In order to keep my videos in the YouTube algorithm, please like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. Thank you for all that you do to help this channel grow one viewer and one subscriber at a time. Verse 1. Hezekiah sent word to all Israel and Judah and also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh, inviting them to come to the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem and celebrate the Passover to the Lord, the God of Israel. The division between Israel and Judah, now 200 years along, works against any chances for unified worship in Jerusalem. But given Israel's oppression at the hands of the Assyrians, Hezekiah perceives an opportunity to reunite the people in worship. He is eager to return the purified and consecrated temple to its intended service for all Israelites. Hezekiah invites all of Israel and Judah, mentioning two tribes of Israel by name. The significance of Ephraim is that the designation is often synonymous with the entire kingdom of Israel. The tribe of Manasseh is the largest of the 12 tribes in terms of geographic size. Its land allotment is specified in Joshua chapter 17, verses 7 through 11. The temple of the Lord in Jerusalem and its predecessor, the tabernacle, was to be the focus of the Israelite worship. However, following the division of the kingdom, King Jeroboam I established pagan worship service practices for the northern kingdom of Israel. These practices were intended to keep his people from going to worship at the temple. 1 Kings chapter 12 verses 25 through 33. His practices directly disobeyed God. The result would be the exile of the northern kingdom, the northern tribes. Over a dozen evil kings followed Jeroboam I on the throne of the northern kingdom of Israel. We wonder how much hope Hezekiah has in attracting Israelites in the northern territory to celebrate the Passover. Passover commemorates God's deliverance of his people from Egypt. The law of Moses prescribes this yearly observance in the place the Lord will choose as a dwelling for his name. A well-attended Passover would be the climax of Hezekiah's restoration project. Verse 2. The king and his officials and the whole assembly in Jerusalem decided to celebrate the Passover in the second month. The law of Moses dictates that observance of the Passover should begin at twilight on the 14th day of the first month of the Israelite year. The Lord allows observances in the second month under certain conditions. Numbers chapter 9, verses 9 through 13. Verse 3. They had not been able to celebrate it at the regular time because not enough priests had consecrated themselves, and the people had not assembled in Jerusalem. The scope of the Passover observance Hezekiah envisions requires much planning and lead time. These realities reveal two obstacles that prevent the celebration from occurring at the regular time on the 14th day of the first month. The first hindrance, a shortage of consecrated priests, echoes the same shortage mentioned in 2 Chronicles chapter 29 verse 34. This is one of 6 places where the chronicler mentions the issue of self consecration. What this involves for priests is outlined as outlined in Leviticus chapter 21, verses 1 through chapter 22, verse 16. The second hindrance is reflected in that not everyone had assembled in time to observe. Some time is needed to communicate the invitation and for those accepting it to arrive in Jerusalem. The logistics of this is the subject of Second Chronicles chapter 30, verses 4 through 5a below. Verse 4. The plan seemed right both to the king and to the whole assembly. Some form of the phrase from Beersheba to Dan occurs 9 times in the Old Testament to reflect the entirety of the kingdom of Israel before the division of 931 BC. Beersheba is about 45 miles to the southwest of Jerusalem, and Dan is more than 150 miles to the north. A walking pace of 3 miles per hour would require 100 hours of walking round trip to get the proclamation to Dan and its people. The round trip would likely require the better part of 2 weeks, depending on various factors. Verse 5. They decided to send a proclamation throughout Israel from Beersheba to Dan, calling the people to come to Jerusalem and celebrate the Passover to the Lord, the God of Israel. It had not been celebrated in large numbers according to what was written. Approximately 200 years had elapsed since the United Monarchy ended. The phrase, in large numbers, indicates only sporadic, at best, Passover observances during that time. The phrase, what was written, probably refers to the instructions in Deuteronomy chapter 16, verses 1 through 8. Verse 6. At the king's command, couriers went throughout Israel and Judah with letters from the king and from his officials, which read, People of Israel, return to the Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, that he may return to you who are left, who have escaped from the hand of the kings of Assyria. The Hebrew word translated couriers is actually a participle in the original language. The verb form of this word communicates the idea of running. We can hardly imagine the messengers literally running the 150 miles between Jerusalem and Dan without stopping. Hence, the idea is more along the lines of without delay. The fact that they are sent throughout Israel and Judah necessitates that they take multiple copies of the invitation, hence the plural word letters. The messenger's strategy is to take the invitation from town to town. The content of the letters comes next. We recall that Israel was the name of the patriarch whose original name was Jacob. In the era after the division of the monarchy, the designation Israelite or Israelites usually refers to those of the 10 northern tribes. And so it seems to be the use of the phrase people of Israel here. The decree's message is simple: return to the Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. The people had returned from the Lord through their idolatry. The people had turned from the Lord through their idolatry. They had rejected the God of their ancestors, the only God there is. As a result of this sin, the Lord will allow foreign invasion. Kings of Assyria took people captive. Inhabitants of Israel who were left behind in the land or had escaped captivity were designated as the remnant. Verse 7. Do not be like your parents and your fellow Israelites who were unfaithful to the Lord, the God of their ancestors, so that he made them an object of horror, as you see. The problem noted in the invitation parallels Hezekiah's previous warning to the priests and Levites. Centuries before Hezekiah's day, the Lord warned the people through Moses of the devastation that would come about should the people reject the Lord. The Lord's words came true. Because of the sin of the Israelites, they were conquered by the Assyrians. The remnant Israelites could see for themselves the horror that had occurred as a result of the invasion. Verse 8: Do not be stiff necked as your ancestors were. Submit to the Lord. Come to his sanctuary, which he has consecrated forever. Serve the Lord your God, so that his fierce anger will turn away from you. To be stiff necked is to be stubborn. The Old Testament refers to the Israelite people numerous times. Several of those connect being stiff necked across generations. This problem persists into the New Testament era. The invitation features three imperatives from returning to the Lord, for returning to the Lord: submit, come, and serve. The three words being translated are found together in only one other place in the Old Testament: Exodus chapter 13, verse 5. There, the order and the actors are somewhat different. In Exodus 13, chapter 5, give means submit, brings means come, observe means serve. In Exodus 13 and 5, it is the Lord Himself who performs the first two actions. It's almost as if the text is saying, the Lord took the first actions and did His parts long ago. Now it's your turn. The context of the two texts are the same in that both deal with the Passover celebration. For God to exercise his fierce anger is not inevitable, not yet anyway. There's still an opportunity for change so that God's anger may turn away from those receiving the invitation. This is the second time that Hezekiah gives awareness of divine anger. The first time is in 2 Chronicles chapter 29, verse 10. Verse 9: If you return to the Lord, then your fellow Israelites and your children will be shown compassion by their captors and will return to this land, for the Lord your God is gracious and compassionate. He will not turn his face from you if you return to him. Sound familiar? It should, since what we see here is a relentless theme in the Old Testament. One commentator observes that the message of the Old Testament prophets can be boiled down to three words: repent or die. Some passages in regard to returning to God are Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 2 through 5, Isaiah chapter 1, verse 16, chapter 55, verse 7, Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 5, and Ezekiel chapter 33, verse 11. The Lord's willingness to renew relationship with his people comes from his gracious and compassionate character. Moses identified these attributes of the Lord's character after seeing the Lord on Mount Sinai. The worship of Israel also proclaimed these attributes. The Lord extends grace and mercy to those who seek him. Verse 26: There was great joy in Jerusalem, for since the days of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, there had been nothing like this in Jerusalem. The days of Solomon is some 200 years in the past at this point. So, the great joy in Jerusalem is not due to any personal recall of previous Passover celebrations. Rather, The people seem to realize that they've received a new something they've been missing. Several decades after King Hezekiah, his great grandson Josiah became king of Judah. Like his great grandfather, Josiah did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. After destroying items of pagan worship, Josiah would oversee efforts to restore the temple. That included reinstituting Passover celebration. Comparing the animal sacrifices of 2 Chronicles chapter 30 verse 24 with those of chapter 35 verses 7 through 9, we surmise that Josiah's Passover drew almost twice the number of people to Jerusalem as did Hezekiah's. The chronicler describes Josiah's Passover similarly to Hezekiah's. The Passover had not been observed like this in Israel since the days of the prophet Samuel, and none of the kings of Israel had ever celebrated such a Passover as did Josiah. Verse 27. The priests and the Levites stood to bless the people, and God heard them, for their prayer reached heaven, his holy dwelling place. References to the priests and the Levites remind us that all priests are Levites, that is, descended from the tribe of Levi. But not all Levites are priests. Bestowing a blessing on the people was one of the tasks given to the Levites by the law of Moses. Perhaps this blessing was modeled after the priestly blessing given by the first priest, Aaron. The content of the prayer of the priests and Levites may reflect the same sentiment as King Solomon's prayer at the dedication of the temple. Thank you so much for listening. Stay safe and may God bless.